Hello everyone, my name is Ololade of Most Fashion Fix. Welcome to my channel. So today we'll be discussing something very important, something very interesting, which is born out of questions I get sometimes, whether for online classes and for the physical school. So sometimes I get questions like, do you have a class on how to make civil wedding dress? And I'm like, I don't even understand the question. Do you have a class on how to make civil wedding dress? It's a different thing if you ask that. Do you have a class on how to make trousers? Do you have a class on how to make shirts? Do you have a class on how to make skirts, or maybe skirt and skirt derivatives, trouser and trouser derivatives? You understand? But you asking a question like, do you have a class on how to make civil wedding dress? Honestly, I do not know how to answer such questions because the answer to that question is very long, and maybe not very long, but it is not a yes or no answer because it will require explaining some things to you on a class on how to make a civil wedding dress. I really don't know how to answer that question. But then this particular question is asked because you don't understand some things, right? So today we'll be discussing something very important and interesting about pattern making. And this is what the principles of pattern making. Yes, we have principles in pattern making. We don't just do things how we like. And when we say principles, what do we mean by principles? Basically, principle just means rules. Yes, rules that guide you to do something. You don't just do things. There are rules you have to follow. So pattern making also has its own principles that you have to follow when designing. And in pattern making, we have three major, or let me just, basically we have three principles in pattern making. Yes, we have three principles in pattern making. And these principles are: number one, we have the dot manipulation. Number two, we have added fullness. And number three, we have contouring. Yes. Not the contouring in makeup. Oh. This is contouring in pattern making. So let me go over that again. We have dot manipulation, we have adding fullness, and we have contouring. So these are the three major principles we follow in pattern making. So we'll talk about these principles one after the other. Maybe not really elaborate, but just for you to have an understanding of what these principles are talking about. Okay. Number one, we have dot manipulation. So dot manipulation is basically rotating or changing the location of that on your pattern. Yes, changing the location of that on your pattern, which doesn't actually affect the fit of your garments. Okay, in pattern making, we have the standard waist dart. On a standard block, we have the standard waist dart and your bust dart. And bust dart, in this case, bust dart can be on two locations. Your bust dart can be on the side, and your bust dart can be on the shoulder. It depends on the pattern making method you are working with. So when you sew a basic bodice, it means you are required to have the waist dart and the bust dart sewn, right? That is basic. You're not manipulating anything. That is what you have, right? Okay. Now, when we now talk about that manipulation, it means you're changing something about your dart. Possibly you are rotating, you are changing the position from where it is to another position, right? Okay. So, and you can actually decide to, transfer this dart in such a way that instead of you having two darts on your bodies, you are having only one dart, right? So when you sew a basic bodice, you're meant to have your waist dart and your bust dart. So when it comes to dart manipulation, you can decide to change the location of this dart. Instead of you sewing the standard waist dart, you move this dart to another location, which could be anywhere around your pattern. You can move to the mid shoulder, the mid neck, the center neck, the mid neck, the armhole, the mid shoulder, the shoulder tip, the French dart position, the center front bust. You can move this dart to any position. Okay, before we go too far, let me state that for you to have a good understanding of what we are talking about here right now, you have to be a pattern maker and not a freehander. That's just it. not for freehanders, because you might not even be able to relate to what I am talking about at all. Okay, so you have to be a pattern maker. So in that manipulation, you are simply changing the location of your darts. Or I can even decide to transfer one of these darts to one location alone. Yes, instead of me to have my standard waist darts and my boss darts, I can decide to move both the standard waist darts and the boss dart to my French dart position. So meaning I'll be having only one dart sewn on that bodies. So that manipulation is one of the principles in pattern making. That is one. Then adding fullness. What does adding fullness mean, or added fullness? Adding fullness or added fullness is when the excess fullness needed is greater than that of the dart. Yes, let's say you want to have, when you transfer, let's take for instance, when you transfer your waist dart and your boss dart to the French dart position, you have a dart excess that is naturally transferred to that position, right? And you know that the dart excess depends on some factor. It depends on your boss dart value, and it depends on the distance of your pivotal point to the new dart position, right? So when you transfer your dart, there is a natural fullness, there's a natural dart excess that you have. So added fullness means you need more than that particular fullness that your dart is giving you. So what do? You introduce the slash and spread technique. You introduce the slash and spread technique. So if the dart excess I was able to generate from my pattern, or while transferring my dart to that position, is 3 inches, and I need more than that, what do? I have to slash to the tip of my pattern for more fullness. So that is what added fullness means. And when you add fullness, your fullness can be gathered, it can be pleated, it can be tugged, it can be smoked, or whatsoever. By the end of the day, you are doing something to this fullness. Okay, so that is number 2. Then number 3, we have contouring. Contouring simply means removal of excess. Now, contouring and tightening sometimes are used interchangeably, but when you're talking in formal terms, it is better to use the word contouring. Even though they are used interchangeably, the right word to use is contouring. But sometimes, or most of the times, they are used to saying, oh, tightening, tightening, tightening. Or you could have asked, is there a difference between tightening and contouring? Really, there is no much difference between tightening and contouring. It is more like you using a layman language when you say tightening. Tightening is also to remove excess, to make something firmer. And that is what contouring basically means as well. Okay. So contouring is you removing excess in a pattern to make the pattern conform to the silhouette of the model, of the client, or whatsoever. Okay. So these 3 major principles are what you apply in any garment you're making. Yes, any garment at all you're making. These are the major principles you apply. It is either you are applying that manipulation, or you are adding fullness, or you are contouring. So when you say I need a course on Igbo, on how to make Igbo blouse, for instance. So what is important here is that, okay, you're asking for a course on how to make an Igbo blouse. What does that even mean? Are you saying there's a special pattern drafted to make an Igbo blouse? Is that it? I don't think so. There is no special pattern to draft, there's no special pattern you draft when you're making an Igbo blouse. Instead, you can just say that there are some features that are peculiar to an Igbo blouse. And our Igbo mothers, one thing that is peculiar to their bustiers is that they love the bust area. The reinforcement of the bust area has to be really solid. And how do you achieve that? They make use of a very solid reinforcement material for the bust area, which is mostly the hard wording that is mostly called kakaraka. I don't know why our Igbo mothers like that effect so much, but then they love it so much. So those are the effects, or those are the features, those are the features you see on an Igbo blouse. It doesn't mean when you are drafting an Igbo blouse, it is not the same bustier you are drafting. Another thing peculiar to Igbo blouse is the fact that it has sometimes have an under bust cut. Yes, and this is simple. It means after drafting your pattern, you are creating a seam on the underbust. Another thing peculiar to Igbo blouses is their choice of fabric. Yes, their choice of fabric make it distinct from every other blouses. Another thing is their sleeves. Thank you. Their sleeves. They are mostly puffed sleeves. And another thing is they are most times off shoulder cuts. So when you now say I want a class on how to make Igbo blouse, are you saying I don't honestly I do not get it. But what I'm trying to tell you here is that for every garment you're making, you are using one, two, or all of these three principles of pattern making. Trust me, you are using one, two, or all of these principles of pattern making. Now, when you say you want a class on how to make civil wedding dress, I can decide to have a civil wedding dress made out of just using that manipulation. Yes, I can decide to have a civil wedding dress like that. That the only thing I'm doing there is just moving my dart location around the bodies. I can decide to have a civil wedding dress that requires me manipulating my dart and also adding fullness. I can decide to have a civil wedding dress that requires me manipulating my dart, adding fullness, and also contouring at some point. Now, when we say contouring, contouring is not limited to only underbust contouring or shoulder contouring or arm contouring. Contouring is also done to remove excess, right? Contouring is done to remove excess, such as when you're having a wide neckline or a deep neckline, naturally when you create an outfit like that, if you do not contour, it is going to gape. Gaping means it is not going to relax. It will be opening up. Take for instance, when you try to bend, even when you stand upright, there is possibility of the garment opening up around some points. So what you do around that point to avoid that gaping is also contouring, because what you have there is excess fabric causing that gaping. So designers, it is very important that you understand these principles one after the other. Your dart manipulation is very important. I do say it all the time that when you understand that manipulation to a very good extent, trust me, there is almost no design that you won't be able to interpret. That manipulation, it is a very, very, very important topic in pattern making. Then adding fullness as well is also important, because when you understand these things and you know when and where to apply them, you will have no problem at all. So when you see a design, first thing you're supposed to do is to first of all analyze it and see what are the principles they made use of to make this garment. Okay, look at it. Does it have style lines? Does it have darts? Because there's a difference between darts and style lines. So you need to look at the design very well. Okay, at any point in time, was the dart manipulated? Or were they concealed into style lines? Okay, is there contouring? Okay, is there added fullness at some point? Those are the things you check out for. I am not ruling out that you don't need to learn styles. For example, if you don't know how to create a bridal design, you don't know it. You don't know it. But when you understand how to create a bridal neckline, you can now decide to do whatever you want to do with bridal designs. Do you understand me, designers? So it doesn't end with I want to learn this style, I want to learn this style. If you keep learning just style and not understanding the principles behind those designs, and one of a very good example of you understanding principle is that, okay, for example, you want to make a tube dress and you want to make a tube dress like a bustier, a bustier tube and a bustier with yoke. One principle that separates them, one of the major principles, is that when you're making a tube, you do not create armhole for it. But when you're creating a bustier with yoke, you are definitely creating armhole for it. Because it is either it has a sleeve or it's going to be sleeveless. But tube, on the other hand, is just passing through your underarm. No sleeve. The highest thing you can have on it is a strap, which you are not creating armhole for. So that is the principle. Okay, when I'm creating a bustier with yoke, definitely I'm constructing armhole. When I'm making a bustier tube, I am not creating armhole. So understanding those things will make you know what and what not to do at different point in time based on the design you're making. So this is why I do make noise about, for every level that you are in fashion design, you can make money, you can monetize it. You do not have to wait till, oh, I haven't learned how to make bustiers, I cannot sew for clients. With your foundational knowledge, with your basic knowledge, when you understand that manipulation very well, you can create magic. You can create designs. There are simple garments you can make based on every level that you are. Do you understand, dear designers? Because many of the times I feel pained when I see people who haven't even perfected their basics, trying to do something beyond their level. You won't get it right. Forget the social media noise and accolades, ingenuine accolades. Forget about those. Just focus on understanding the principles. When you understand these things, you will go far. Trust me. And I pray maybe in our subsequent classes, maybe you will have to start taking these principles one after the other. Like that manipulation, we have a simple practical on it. Adding fullness, we have a simple practical on it. Then contouring, we have a simple practical on it. So maybe that will help us to understand better. But I believe this little enlightenment will help you to understand some things. So designers, there is no special pattern for civil wedding. There's no special pattern for Igbo blouse. There's no special pattern for some designs. Do you understand? It is you understanding the principle of pattern making. Trust me, it is understanding the principles. And don't forget that at the end of the day, one of the most important factors that leads to acceptance or rejection of any garment you make is the overall fit. I said one of the most important, because we could have other factors such as how neat your job is, how well they are interpreted, and all of that. But one of the most important factors at the end of the day is the fit of your garment. So this will be my closing word, designers. Make sure you do not joke with your foundation and understanding of your principles in pattern making. So if you get value from this session, please kindly give this video a thumbs up. Once again, my name is Ololade of Most Fashion Fix, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.